whether it's passive talent or it's active talent.
That's a soft skill that really gets undersold in the hiring process.
How to manage in the virtual environment.
You get a diverse, cultured group of people. It's a win-win for everybody.
More conversion from candidate leads.
What does that look like in this new virtual world?
Welcome everyone, and happy Pride Month. June it is, summer is finally upon us. Hopefully you're starting to get some good weather and venturing outside a little bit. I know I did this weekend when it wasn't raining, but enough about my weekend. It is Thursday, noon Eastern time, and you know what that means. It is time for Talent Experience Live, and we are coming to you live from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania today, as well as globally. We have a couple guests joining us from across the pond, if you will. I am your host, Devin Foster, and this is your weekly look at hot topics in HR, interviews with leaders in the industry, as well as hot new HR tech. Today, we are talking about hot topics, specifically sustainable work-life balance and how it takes two to make a thing go right. You know the song, sing along in your head if you would like to. But first, as tradition around these parts and always on the show, we love to hear where everyone is from. So please feel free to hop into the comment section. Let us know where you are watching from. Today we have Justin joining us just outside of PA, as well as Shane joining us in Pennsylvania. Shane, I know you are going through some medical things, so best of luck. Get well soon. But while you are sharing where you're from, share this out to your network. Sharing is caring. As I mentioned, we do this on a weekly basis, and we always cover great topics. It makes very special when everyone interacts and is able to get their questions answered. So feel free to share that. I saw Shushma joining from India, Jen joining from Ambler. We also have Julie joining us from Downingtown, Denise joining us from Mifflesburg, PA. I'm going to take a shot at that one. I apologize if I was incorrect. While you're here and while you're active in the chat, welcome Riley from Bluebell. Today we have an icebreaker question, and it's, I think, my favorite one that I've ever asked. Today's topic is all about work-life balance, and my question for you, the audience, is what do you do during your workday to give yourself a break? Is it going for a walk? Is it potentially grabbing a cup of coffee, eating outside, or simply just away from your desk? All of those are viable options. I will let you know that previously when we worked in the office, I used to always go on a run. But now that I work from home, I have a lot more time before and after work. So I found other times to run. So instead, to give myself a little mental break and a little bit of a restart or refresh on the day, I find myself doing stretches. Just anywhere on the floor in my house. My chiropractor recommended it. So far, it has been fantastic for me. So let me know what you do to reset your body throughout the day and even your mind. I see more people are chiming in with where they're from. Lots of people joining us from India as well as Switzerland. Welcome. And you are excited. Or Julie chimes in with taking the dog for a walk. Always good. My dog Ernie is sitting right next to me as always. We're going to be taking him for a walk after the show. Jen says going for a quick walk outside always helps clear her head. Hopefully, Jen, it is not raining when you are outside, because nothing dampens a good walk like a little bit of rain. But today we are talking about sustainable work-life balance and how, I said it before, it takes two to make this thing go right. Achieving and maintaining healthy work-life balance requires a party of two, both employees and employers. An ideal balance that lasts over time needs a slew of modern workplace best practices, and from anything from revised PTO policy to a personalized approach in employee work styles, flexibility, informal and open lanes of communication between both employees and supervisors, as well as the organization as a whole. And today we have two very special guests joining me to talk about this topic. We have Ioana Lupu, Associate Professor at EESEC Business School, France, and Mayra Ruiz-Castro, Senior Lecturer at the University of Roehampton in the United Kingdom. And without any further hesitation, shout out to Tom Tate in the comment section saying slew is his favorite word. I now will know to put that in every single Slack message that I send him. But with that being said, let's welcome on Ioana and Mayra. Welcome. How are you both?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
It's awesome to have you on the show.
Here.
Thank you so much. First of all, it is tradition around these parts that no one gets out of or on the show without answering the icebreaker question. So I will start with you, Ioana. What do you do to reset your day and give yourself a little bit of a mental break?
I do something that maybe not everybody can do. So I have a baby. So he's 1 year old. So when I stop my work, I tend to take some time to play with him and feed him. So we spend a few moments like that during the day.
That's awesome. You certainly can't show up to Zoom meetings while you're playing with your child on the side. That may be unprofessional in some areas, but it's awesome to do, right? It gives you a fresh perspective on the day, and I'm sure what you are truly working for is to create the best environment for your children. Mayra, how about you? What do you do to press the reset button on the day?
Well, I love walking, actually. So and that's all something that I have always done. So I try to go outside. I'm very fortunate to live in London, but it's a very green area, and so I go to Richmond Park. If anyone is familiar with London, you might have heard of Richmond Park, and I live very close. So I go for a walk to Richmond Park. I also have to confess that I have contributed to this dog pandemic going on at the moment around the world, and we got a puppy. The puppy is now 7 or 8 months old, so the puppy is definitely taking me out of the house at least twice. And I'm enjoying it a lot. I also have small children, so they love the puppy and they come with me. And I'm really enjoying these 2 breaks I take during the day to walk the puppy with my children.
That is awesome. I know a colleague of mine, Rob Jackson, who's also based out of London. He was looking for a puppy over the course of the pandemic and said it was no easy task, that they were sold out everywhere or they were being charged exorbitant amounts of money. So I'm happy that you have a new member of your family, and that's also very exciting. Mayra, I'm going to ask you the first question, and
yes, sure.
If you want to chime in. Work-life balance is something that truly has to stick around. I think it was a conversation pre-pandemic, but now that we are all kind of working almost 24/7 in our offices, if you will, we're always just a few steps away from our computers or our desks. How do you think it has changed in the approach to it since March of 2020, and how are people tackling it differently?
Yeah, as you said, I think work-life balance has been an important issue for many decades already, right? And organizations, along with researchers, have tried to find solutions, right, or ways of making it work, right? But the thing is that balance really means different things for different people in different cultures, different industries, organizations. And I think the way it has changed is that people now realize that work and life balance is not something that is unattainable, right, or a nice to have. Or some sort of privilege, right? I think what people have realized now is that it is feasible, right? For some, of course, it is feasible, and there are alternatives to the way we were working before the pandemic, right? So for many organizations, it was unthinkable to see the majority of the workforce working from home, right? If they didn't see the employee in the office, that meant the employee wasn't being productive or wasn't commitment to her job or his job. But that needed to change, right? And also for people, many people couldn't think of working differently, right? So I have to go to the office 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 p.m. I have to work on weekends, etc., was also taken for granted. And now people actually realize that there is other ways of living, right? That feel a little bit more, more balanced, right? But also more satisfying. right? And so people are finding alternatives, and organizations are forced to offer those alternatives.
Yeah, absolutely. You want anything to add? Any a different perspective?
Yeah, so in my research, I find that surprisingly, many companies were already prepared for this jump to working from home. But so it wasn't the first the technological obstacles. So they were really were equipped to have teams working from home. It was mostly a cultural obstacle that made this difficult, and many people thought that it wasn't acceptable, and so they feared of being sanctioned, being penalized in their careers, and not being considered committed workers.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting thought. You bring up culture, and oftentimes when I've traveled abroad, I've heard this analogy for the United States is they live to work while the rest of the world works to live. And I think when we talk about culture and the differences there, one of the big mainstays in European culture specifically is the summer holiday, right? It's a full holiday where you take time off to visit family or spend time in a vacation area. How was that impacted last year, and how excited are people to hopefully get back to normal this year? And have organizations changed the way that they approach kind of the time off that is allocated to employees because of it?
So I think you're right when you say here that we see quite a lot of cultural differences from one country to the other. And I live and work in France, and France is very well known for promoting the 35 hours week, and also in 2007 a law talking about the right of employees to disconnect, and saying that companies with more than 50 employees have to establish the hours when staff can and should send emails on, and moments when they should refrain from sending emails. So yes, it is this let's say social acceptability of people not protecting private time, so protecting moments they spend with their families, protecting holidays, and that's it happens. And it is encouraged, I would say, by the state, this welfare state that we have in France and in many countries, other countries in Europe, a state whose role is not only to ensure order and security, but really to promote, let's say, the welfare and the well-being of the population. And so it does have an important role. And we see differences from country to country.
Mayra, how about in the UK?
Yeah, well, I think we have to distinguish, and before I say a little bit of the British context, I think we have to distinguish between organizational culture and national culture, right? Because I think those are very strong forces. So national cultures, of course, they will influence how work-life balance is understood, and what type of approach is adopted, what type of initiatives are implemented, etc. Right? So in the US, as you say, there have been people work very long hours, right? And the US is well known for that. But there is this sense of notion of autonomy, right? So people are in control, or feel more in control of their work. But there is this idea that they have to work very long in order to succeed, right? And then being the US a more individualistic culture, of course, there is an emphasis on individual success, right? On my own well-being, on my own health, on my own advancement, progression, etc., right? Whereas in collectivistic cultures, probably the idea of balance is more geared towards, okay, I have a job to be able to provide to my family, and not only my close family, but my extended family, right? And I have a job so that it also allows me to perhaps be more involved in community work, etc., etc. That would be some Asian countries or Latin American countries, for example. But then, of course, then you have very strong organizational cultures that, even though companies might have offices in different countries with very different national cultures, the organizational culture is strong and overrides national culture sometimes, right? And this is especially the case of, for example, consulting firms or auditing firms, right? That regardless of the place where they are based, long hours culture is very prevalent, right? So we need to distinguish between organizational culture and national culture. In the case of France, as Ioana said, right, the state plays a very important role, and also the fact that unions are so strong in France, that also contributes to to helping people, right, to protect people's time, to keep specific numbers of hours worked a week, holidays, etc., etc., etc. In the US, there is less regulation, less participation of unions, of course, and so it's more open, right, to the individual to negotiate individually, of course.
That makes complete sense. And Ioana, you mentioned if it's after hours, almost like a pop-up message that says, it's 7 p.m. or 19 p.m. right for I think that would be correct in Europe. But if it before you send the message, and immediately I thought back to some of my communications with our teams in India, in Israel, as well as over in Europe, and it tells me what time it is for them there. And I think that's a little thing that can go a long way. It almost reminds me of Netflix, and when you're binge watching whatever series it may be, it says, "Are you still watching this?" And you're like, "Yes, I am." But this is the same sort of pop-up notification that says, "Hey, be nice here and be conscious of what time it is for your colleagues who may not be in the same time zone for that." Mayra, when it comes to the message that organizations are sending, I know you had an article in the Harvard Business Review where you did interviews with a number of professionals in Europe. What were organizations messaging around work-life balance, and has that changed over the course of the year? And do you continue to see it change as you further your research?
That's a very important question. I think that the type of organizations we researched, right, for this particular article and other related articles was consulting and auditing firms, basically in France, right? And I think the understanding of work-life balance, it being a Western country, right, and adopting Westernized ideas of work-life balance, I think the main approach of this type of organizations, and it would be the same in the UK, was to focus on work flexibility, right? So a 4-day a week, or a compressed week, or perhaps part-time jobs, 20 hours a week, etc., etc. So I think that was very much the approach, the emphasis on how many hours you are expected to work according to your contract, right? But I think now, and I see this very strongly changing very strongly, I think definitely the emphasis now is much more on well-being and health. I'm conducting research on the impact of COVID-19 on working couples in the UK, and what I find, the experiences they have shared with me in terms of what the employers have done for them, it's been mostly focused on well-being and health, right? So offering more opportunities, as you say, to relax, right, in terms of offering yoga and Pilates midday, lunchtime, also virtually, having some sort of social interaction every day or at least once a week, sending employees some well-being package, right, with flowers. I heard of a company actually sending plants to employees' houses, right, because we know that plants have a positive impact on people's well-being. So I think definitely the emphasis went from okay, how many hours or how many days a week you want to work, right, to balance work and life, to let's make sure you are all right, let's protect your well-being and let's protect your health. Small activities or initiatives like what you mentioned, right, messages asking people to take a break, for example, right, or making sure that there are no meetings during lunchtime. No one is allowed to book a meeting during lunchtime, or that meetings have to have 10 minutes in between of a break so people can leave their chairs and stretch, etc., etc. So I think overall, I think the most important change I see is that it's a move from how many hours and how many days to how let's protect our well-being, our employees' well-being.
You want anything to add on that?
Sorry, here I think a storm started.
Oh, no, it's okay.
I hear the rain tapping just above my head in the roof. So yes, so I agree with what Mayra just said, and I've noticed. Also noticed the same trends in France, conducting interviews with professionals in France. I think over the course of this last year, and especially I think the last month, employers have become more aware of the difficulties that some employees are confronted with, and especially young employees, the ones that don't have that are new to the world of companies, and they in some cases they haven't even been properly trained or inducted and in the company's culture and procedures, so they already had to move to work from home. So they are some of the workers that feel more isolated, and they often have to work in spaces that are not adequate for work. Some were saying that they were working I'm working in my kitchen, on my kitchen table. So it's very difficult for them. And what I've heard, many are really looking forward to going back to office life, going back to interactions, going back to learning by watching, other more experienced people doing things. And many employees also told me about this hyper visibility that they have to that they deal with every day during Zoom conferences and team conferences. And the fact that they feel that in many cases, in order to compensate for the lack of physical presence in the office, in many cases managers started to increase monitoring of their activities, using, for instance, Microsoft Teams, which shows them when an employee is online or when he or she goes offline. So many are worried, and in front of these demands for hyper visibility, they try to adapt some strategies to render themselves more visible, and some of that may be also around working more hours and showing more availability. So just to conclude a little bit what Mayra and I have said, I think what we see very contrasting behaviors and lots of tensions and paradoxes at the same time, because we see hypervisibility. People deal with this hypervisibility, and they it's very difficult for many of them, but at the same time that brings them to adopt strategies of increased visibility. On the other side, some say that they enjoy working from home because they feel more autonomous and they are given more autonomy. But paradoxically, they end up using this autonomy to make themselves more available and to work more hours, which leads to a reduction in their autonomy. So we see these kind of very contrasting things happening, and lots of kind of paradoxical situations, I would say.
Yeah, it's very interesting because you mentioned the new workforce coming into the organizational environment, and I think of Mayra with her new dog, right? When you return to the office, the dog is going to be surprised. It's what's going on here. I'm used to the family being home, or when the kids return to school, and it's the same thing with working professionals, right? If they're used to that sort of impact and them working in that environment, they don't know anything different. And with that being said, Ioana, you mentioned the activity on Microsoft Teams or on Slack or even LinkedIn, when it lets you know that individuals are online. It certainly can create a toxic environment in that sense, where individuals just need to be online to show that they are working, where if you were in an office or in a place where there was a lot more collaborative work, it wouldn't be strange for a group of individuals to close their laptops and go into a room with a whiteboard and start brainstorming ideas in that sense, right? And I think it brings up a conversation that I have with my boss on a regular basis. We do some one-on-one calls and things like that while we walk, right? So we close our computers, we hop on the telephone, and then we walk and talk throughout. And if somebody else is looking, that may look like we're not being productive. However, we still are having a productive conversation throughout. So I can totally understand the paradox there and the catch-22 between them both. With your research being done, what has it said about productivity as a whole and their engagement? We mentioned some of the negative impacts, but from your interviews, was there an overwhelming answer that people were more or less productive or more or less engaged, or was it kind of 50-50 split?
Well, I can refer to this, to the interviews I have conducted with working couples, as I said. Although the analysis is in the preliminary phase, in the initial phase, I think I'm seeing the trend that people feel more productive, right? Because they mentioned that there are less interruptions, right? There is not this situation in which you meet a colleague in a corridor and then you have coffee, right? Also, meetings are not extended simply because, we are sitting here in front of the computer, and that people, it's exhausting, right, to sit in front of the computer all day long. So at some point, people just, meetings are more focused, right, more concise, to the point, because there is not the chatting that goes around in a room, in a meeting room. But I think what makes people feel more productive, I suppose, is the fact that they are getting their work done, but at the same time they are able to do things at home that they weren't able to do before, right? So that walk, that 30 minutes walk, can be combined with walking to the supermarket, right? And some people say, sometimes I didn't have time to go to the supermarket during the week. It was something that I would only do on Saturdays, or cleaning the house, or putting things in the washing machine, and then the Saturday was gone in this type of activities, and I really only had Sunday to relax. But I think people are interweaving these activities. I take a break from work and I do something related to the house, or I go to the supermarket. And I feel that so many of them, and I have to say that these are professionals, right? Mostly professionals. They felt that they were able to be more autonomous over both the work and personal personal life. I don't have the sense that people felt they were less productive. What definitely, if there was any worry, was about the uncertainty, right? The uncertainty of what's going to happen with my job or with our organization, et cetera. But there wasn't a clear sense of I'm being very unproductive working from home. All the contrary, I would say all the contrary. I don't know what has been Ioana's experience with his research in France.
Yes. So I would say that I see people kind of navigating between different what I call temporal experiences. So there are moments when people feel overwhelmed and not in control of their work life, and then so I call those periods of extreme busyness, excessive busyness. So they experience busyness as in an excessive and oppressive way. They feel out of control, and there we see how their productivity is decreasing, and they also say we're not as productive, or possibly also making some errors in our work. And then there are periods when people achieve a kind of balance, which I call optimal busyness. So a moment or experiences where they are in control of their work time, and they feel in charge. They feel autonomous. They feel like they ride the wave. So they are stimulated. They're getting the stimulation of doing, because they're doing work against the deadlines. So it's some of this, it's also adrenaline giving. So you're stimulated, but at the same time you're not stimulated too much. You're still in control of the wave. And then, of course, there are can be also moments when you don't get enough stimulation. But those, I've heard very little recently about these moments when people feel bored by the tempo of their work. It's mostly in the first two phases, so either excessive or more towards optimal, that the temporality of work moves.
That makes sense. The one last question that I have for both of you is: do you think managers should make it a part of their day to ask their employees, what have you done for yourself today? Have you stepped away? It doesn't have to be a specific time. It doesn't have to be anything like that. But to ensure, we talked at the top of the program how individuals have different balance when it comes to that work life, and to ensure that they actually took some time for that. Is that something that you would recommend managers do, or is it something that they should stand kind of away from and allow an individual to find that on their own? We'll start with you, Mayra.
Yes, I mean, that's a very good question, right? And whether it's responsibility of managers, I think undoubtedly, right? I mean, at the end of the day, managers are responsible for the employees' well-being. And employees can, of course, take the initiative, and many people do, right? Many employees take initiative by themselves to look after themselves. But I think, yes, definitely, there must be a stronger sense of responsibility for employees' well-being, especially during these times, well-being and work-life balance. And just asking that question, right? What have you done for yourself? I think it's very important. And self-care, definitely self-care should be a priority for everybody and every type of organization. If they want their employees to be, to feel happy and feel productive and in balance, definitely that's something that managers can do. I would welcome such question every single day, definitely. Yeah.
Ioana, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I think for me it kind of depends, of course, of the size of the team, of the needs of the members of the team. Younger members may need more often feedback, or more senior people may not need as frequent feedback. But one thing is sure, I think, and we see this trend accelerating, we're moving away from this kind of outdated annual or whatever biannual feedback or evaluation, annual evaluation meetings, towards more continuous feedback and almost real-time feedback on performance. And I also think this trend, it can go in a very, very good direction. But I tend, through my research, to also look at also the dark side of that. How much is too much, and how much it goes beyond the limits of what it's good for employees. Because I know that recently quite a lot of law firms have adopted different apps to give feedback to their employees, in real time after a meeting. Immediately the manager can write you, a couple of lines of feedback on how you did. So yes, that I know this kind of feedback might be very appreciated, but we have to be cautious and always aware how much is too much. So really stay in some kind of middle ground, I would say.
I think the attention to employees' well-being, right? I think it has to be genuine. It has to be genuine. Yes. If it's just a box-ticking exercise, employees, of course, won't like that. Employees are not naive, right? They know when it's genuine care and when it's where it's in the interest of profits and et cetera, right? So I think as long as it's genuine, I think it could be useful for employees, right? Could be a supporting initiative, definitely.
Absolutely. And I agree. I think too much of a good thing could always potentially become a bad thing. And a lot of times when you have a meeting, or when I even think to reading a book, when you initially put down the book, you may not have the best feeling and say, that wasn't my favorite book. But if you wait a second and think through the ideas and think through that and help reach a genuine understanding of the book, it may change. And the same thing can be said for annual reviews or daily reviews after meetings or anything like that, as well as is an individual taking enough of that me time for a sustainable work-life balance that we talked about. I want to thank you both for joining me today. This has been awesome. I learned a ton. But I also know that you recently published the article on the Harvard Business Review. Excuse me. I know we'll post a link in the show notes, but for anyone who's watching right now, is there a particular website or something that they can search to find it right now?
Yeah, definitely the link to the HBR article and perhaps to our research profiles as well, where we are updating the research we are conducting. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
That piece of research on how work-life balance is not, an achievement, but it's really more like a cycle. I think it might be relevant for the listeners.
For the audience, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I wish you the best. Hopefully the weather clears up and you get to enjoy your weekends as things begin to open up. And hopefully we'll chat again soon.
Devin, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be in this conversation.
Thank you with you today.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, there you have it. We were talking everything about sustainable work-life balance, how it isn't something to achieve, but it is an ongoing process. I know this very well because 2 weeks ago I took a vacation. Tom Tate filled in for me, and I need another vacation, but I'm not going to take one. So don't worry, Tom. You don't have to fill in for me at this point in time. However, I do want to run a couple quick promos before we sign off. First things first, we recently launched here at Phenom, Phenom Hiring Manager, and we do have a quick ad that we will run for you there. So Justin, as you are pulling the levers behind the scenes, please pull the lever now.
Are you suffering from an outdated and seemingly endless hiring cycle? Have you considered just straight up bribing your talent acquisition team for better recommendations? Have your recruiters forgotten you exist? If so, you may be experiencing hiring fatigue, but you're not alone. Introducing Phenom's Hiring Manager. Finally, there's a new way to discover and hire who you need, when you need them, in less time. Side effects include nausea and drowsiness. No, wait, sorry, this is the wrong list. Side effects include just getting out there and totally crushing it as you find your team's next A player. Do not use Phenom if you're allergic to good decisions, or if you prefer to subject your candidates to a long and arbitrary process. Ask your TA team if Phenom is right for you. Thanks, Phenom!
Thank you,
wow,
thanks,
oh my gosh, thank you!
Wow, what an intuitive and user-friendly product!
The end of that video kills me. Shout out to Shane for doing a great job on that. Once again, before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe. We do this show every single Thursday at noon Eastern time. Always great topics. Next week, we are chatting with Stanford Health all about their career site. And last week, actually their chat line, excuse me. Last week, we talked with US Cellular specifically about their career site with Eric Clemens, Senior Manager of Employment Brand Strategies there. And this clip is all about how important the job description page is, because oftentimes candidates aren't walking through your front door on your homepage of your career site. They're coming from the side door, their garage door, job boards, LinkedIn postings, wherever it may be. And he talks a little bit here about how important making an interactive job description page is. So let's run the clip now.
We looked at our some of the analytics behind the pages. And one of the most interesting things that we found through this process was that our job description pages were the number one visited page, and drop off was the highest on the job description page. So what that told us was people are coming into job boards, they're looking at the job description, and then most of them are leaving from that job description. So what that told us through this process is like, okay, how do we create a more engaging job description, right? How do we more engaging job profiles without turning them into microsites? And so what we're doing right now, we're testing it on our customer service jobs, is we have a video integration with scrolling video, so people can go and they can hear directly from individuals sitting in those roles. So it's providing that additional information, pushing them to other pages on the site. That was probably the most interesting thing. So I know a lot of focus gets put on the home page and this page, but if you don't pay attention to your job description page, that'll have a tremendous impact on how people view your job opportunities in your organization.
Shout out to Eric Clemens, fantastic episode last week, and shout out to US Cellular for their fantastic new career site. Thank you everyone from jumping into the chat. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Cy. Thank you, Riley. Thank you, Julie. And everyone else who chimed into the chat. It was spectacular. I enjoy doing this every single Thursday with you guys. Can't wait to chat with you next week. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day as well as a swell weekend. Thanks.